Did you know that the fuel consumption of your car goes beyond just the prices? As motorists continue to grapple with the high prices, we speak to Roland Mugalu, a car technician, who shares with us tips on how to lower your fuel consumption and get the best out of your car. This is the issue. Welcome to this week's episode. My name is Sarah. The fuel prices have been high for the past few months. So today you can help us, tell us a few tips on what the drivers can use to lower the fuel consumption on the road.
Okay, thank you. That is very interesting. It is a misconception by most motorists on how to save fuel within their driving cycle. So there are various ways to save fuel. Regardless, we have different of them around. Actually, I'll be taking through around 17 per se. One of them, you have to ensure that you service your car very well and on time. Why is that related to fuel saving tips? Actually, servicing your car in the right time, for example, when the engine is low on oil, some cars like this Mercedes-Benz I'm on, it will be warning you on the dashboard that service is due or service has exceeded certain days or time frame. So for other cars which do not warn you, of course your mechanic would have indicated the service tag somewhere else. If you delay servicing your car, what happens? For example, look here, one of the servicing things which are considered the air filter element. You see, this one, as you can see, it's responsible to filter the air which is going in for the internal combustion engine. Remember, it is having the air duction system where this air is sucked by the piston junctions into the engine. If there is dirty air, or if this air cleaner is clogged with that, it's like you breathing and someone is holding your nose. Remember, you'll be facing difficulties in breathing. The same applies to the engine. To be suffocating, and the computer of the car, remember these cars are EFI, electronic fuel injection, the computer itself will be compensating for the poor air intake by putting in more fuel. So if you happen to change this air cleaner in time, you've already saved one coin or fuel. And other things, you have to ensure that you use the right fuel with the fuel rule. Remember, fuels with high octane rating. Octane rating is a rate at which fuel burns. If you use adulterated fuel, that is fuel which has been mixed with other additives which are not proper, you'll be losing on the combustion rate. Remember, this octane rating number, like the 95 currently, is the number of octane rating, the fuel at which, actually the rate at which fuel burns. If it's very low, that means there will be incomplete or poor burning of the fuels, thus being wasted, and it has not given you power you need. So that means value for money is wasted. Okay, actually, octane rating by a layman, it's really hard to understand, but I will recommend a few top fuel stations, which I may not mention because I'm not doing partnership with them. Actually, of course, everybody here knows a good fuel station in town. So it's very easy to identify a remote fuel pump or station which is in a remote area. Remember, they don't have those standardized precautions while storing their fuel. They are not properly regulated. That means they are capable of adding more additives to the fuel so that they sell more. You get? That means the octane or the burning rate at which that fuel will be burning to give you power in your car is wasted. So it's easier to ask your mechanic or you go to a competent fuel station which are located countrywide, then you'll be able to know the right fuel to use on your car. Another point, we have to ensure that the tire pressure is inflated at the correct pressures. If you don't know, or you need to know about the correct right pressures of tires, some cars, they are located on the fuel cover lid. For example, Mercedes-Benz, and other cars, it's located right about there. If not, you could find the service manual of your car, which at most cases is being put in the glove box. The correct tire pressures are a must. Why? Since if there is poor or incorrect tire pressures per se, the pressure of the tire is very low, you're going to experience a problem of rolling resistance. That is the friction between the tires and the car itself. Actually, the tires and the road surfaces, there will be much drag, which is also going to affect the performance of the car in the process. Remember, resistance is the force which actually opposes motion. Actually, that is friction is the force that opposes motion, right? That means the more the friction which is attributed onto the tires, which are not properly inflated at the correct pressures, it means that there will be much friction between the tires and the road, which will cause more dragging force onto the vehicle, and in turn, it is suffocating your pockets in terms of money. So there is no fuel saving there. The correct procedure is to inflate at the right pressures. Then also another point, use on unnecessary weight which you load into the car in case you don't need it. There is no sense of keeping much load in the trunk or the boot when you're not going to use it. For example, I have a friend who always have many pair of shoes in the boot, that if at all he gets a function anywhere, he just throws on the shoes. But they are not necessary. I advised him lately and I told him it's consuming your fuel. Remember, it's much load exerted on the car, and this car, to operate it, the weight of the car is very, very crucial. Also, there are different spoilers which I see more people put on the bumpers and the aero racks. Those how can I call them, like actually they are the racks which some cars have on the top, and someone leaves them there regardless of the meaning that it has a journey to carry load there. Even if it's there, it's adding another weight onto the car, thus contributing on fuel consumption. Also, we have an important tip for you all motorists. You see this plug? It's an NGK, and we're having a Denso here, and also we have Bosch and Mercedes-Benz plugs here. So remember, different spark plugs are used on different cars and different engines and different applications. For example, this one is a long reach spark plug. This one is a short reach plug. They could be fitting in the same position, but the performance is different. That means if I use a short reach instead of a long reach plug, it means that this one will not have proper performance due to the parameters and the specification of the manufacturer. Remember also, this spark plug has an air gap between the two and the electrodes. Electrode are these two conducting elements of the spark plug, you know, and the air and the spark has to be induced between that gap, whereby the atomized fuel or the fuel in the vapor form is being burnt by the plug. So if this plug can't produce the exact spark needed for the car, the spark could be weak or the spark could be intensively high. That means this spark plug, if it produces a low spark, that will be low fuel burnt, since the light spark will not be very offensive to burn. That means that the fuel will be there and burnt incompletely. That means the car will be having incomplete combustion, and at times at the tailpipe you could experience black smoke. That black smoke is attributed to the air-fuel mixture, what we call the stoichiometric ratio. For the petrol cars or gasoline cars, its ratio is 14 points. Well, another fuel-saving tip, you have to ensure that if there is any dashboard warning light onto the instrument cluster, you have to give it immediate attention. Why and how? So any light which comes on, for example, if you switch on ignition switch of your car, that the first step is accessories, then the next step of the key is the ignition switch on. If all the lights are there, it's okay. But when you crank and the engine starts and the car or the engine is at idling, that means any dashboard warning light which remains on there, it is a malfunction. For the ignition on, it means that the lights and other systems are in check and ready to operate. But when you start the engine and the engine starts running, any light which remains on is a malfunction. How do you tell that this is the light, this is the light? Of course, you may not be in position to tell. As I said, you can Google, and another thing, you can give a call to your mechanic and ask him about the light. So the remedy for that, you go for computer diagnostics, where we put the diagnostic tool or the scan tool so that the computer communicates with the engine ECU, electronic control module, and it tells which sensor is defective. Remember, most of the cases, dashboard warning lights which come on for the engine check in particular, most of the cases could go for the oxygen sensors, which is responsible to monitor the exhaust gases. If there is more fuel being expelled in the exhaust pipe, the oxygen sensor in particular is responsible to monitor if there is rich or lean mixture in the tailpipe. If there is much fuel being unburnt due to complete combustion as a result of what I said about the spark plugs or the air filter, it will be costing you more fuel, because for it to report a lean or a rich mixture, then the ECU will be compensating such that the engine doesn't stall or the engine doesn't stop. It will compensate by adding more fuel into the engine. Remember, we're on the fuel saving tips. And the more fuel being injected and not being burnt completely, it means fuel is wasted and it will dig more damage onto your pockets. Another thing, we also have to ensure that you plan your trip. Planning your trip is important. I remember back on campus, we as freshers, we could take a route. Maybe you're going to the library. Then all of a sudden your friend tells you, we're going to the canteen. Then people seeing you moving on the street will be like, are these people mad? Of course they are not, but they have just had an abrupt change in the trip. The same applies here. If you've budgeted, I'm going to Kampala, maybe from Kono, drive straight to Kampala.
Thank you for watching. See you next week on the next episode of The Issue.